Look at this, a lovely Lahore Common, just over 31 pounds. Caught it off the spot again at 135 yards using the 10-pound subline and new tapered subline leaders.
There are two different tapered lines in the range now, making long range fishing really easy. First of all, Damien's using the tapered subline leaders, so you get 5 leaders on a spool in various breaking strains. Which ones are you using, mate?
I'm using 10-pound subline mainline to the 0.28 leader.
Right, okay. And the leader goes up to what point?
0.50, which is about 35 to 40 pound breaking strain.
Right, okay. So by joining two lines together of a similar diameter, you get a tiny little knot.
Tiny little knot, yeah. And I use a 4-turn back-to-back grinner knot.
Right.
And I leave the tails quite long, so we haven't got a little stubby bit catching the line as it goes through.
So you're tying one grinner first,
yep,
around around the other piece of line, and then the other grinner, and then the two are coming
together,
down and joining together.
And you get a tiny little knot.
Right, okay.
Now those two diameters being the same is really important.
Yeah, and you don't have to put that in the same place on the spool every time, do you?
No, I used to do that, but with these, I haven't even bothered, just wind it straight on.
Yeah, when you cast as much as you are here, because with that crosswind, you don't drop it right every single time, do you? It does take a few goes. There's nothing worse than having to keep getting it all right and getting it at the bottom of the spool when you get out of a rhythm, don't you?
Yeah, it's a nightmare doing that. But, you know, I found that with these leaders, you don't have to do any of that. Just keep the spool wet, keep the line wet, and it just flies out there.
And I'm guessing as well, if you're fishing up against snags and that sort of stuff, if you snap off, it's going to snap at the leader knot, isn't it? So if you get caught in an island or whatever, you're not going to leave like 40, 50 yards of line sailing off the island.
No.
It'll probably snap at the leader knot.
That is such an advantage. I snapped up earlier, pulled into a snag, and it broke at the leader knot. And it, you know, because it was late in the day, put another leader on, and it went straight back out in the same place.
Yeah. So what was the reason for not doing the tapered leaders out of Adrena-line, which is obviously the casting line in the range? Why were they done out of subline?
Well, because the subline's less stretch,
yep,
it's more abrasive resistant, heavier. It's just a beautiful material.
Yeah, it's certainly very robust, isn't it? And if you're giving something like loads of punishment, you want a line that's just going to last and last and last.
It's been so successful. You know, this year loads of people have started using subline.
Yeah,
it's such
some very good anglers as well, actually. You know, people that don't normally go in the mags and all that sort of thing. We've had a little bit of feedback from them, haven't we, that, you know, it's the best line they've ever used.
Yeah, I think it'll be a classic that will stand the test of time. So Dan, you're using the tapered mainline. Why have you preferred to use that?
Well, it's the best of the best, really. You know, all right, you only get 2 goes at it because you've got a tapered length at either end of a 300-metre spool. So if you crack off once, you reverse it round, you know, wind it onto another spool and the leader's on the top again. So you only get 2 goes, and I mean, I haven't cracked off once, and I must have cast 200 times, you know. But not having a leader not there at all right, it's a little bit more expensive than doing it the way you're doing it, but it just never ever catches, you know. And to have that thick part at the end, even if you're not range fishing, you know, is such an advantage if you're playing fish around snags and all that sort of thing. But here, when you're casting, you just need to know it's not going to snap and it's not going to frap up, because if you think that's going to happen, you don't give it as much, do you?
No, you don't.
You hang back off of it, and you know, having that available in, you know, I mean, I'm using the 030 to 055. It goes right down to 028, which is £8 line, to 055 for really blatting it when there's no snags at all. And then there's another 033, which it breaks at about £14, I suppose, the main line, up to 055. So like somewhere like Gigantica, where there are a few snags around and sometimes you do have to pull really hard, that's the one I'd use there. So there's sort of something in the range for everybody, and you get a lot of guys, you know, they're not casting big rods and they've got £50 leaders on, with great big leader knots and all that, and it's just not balanced, is it, you know? So if you go down to, you know, if you're not a big caster and you go down to the 028, you'll get miles with that, even like a £3 test curve rods, you know.
I suppose the other thing is, in the UK, we've got a lot of lakes that won't allow leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big advantage, but because there's no leader knot there at all, you can get around that rule. And I know people that fish those sort of places have used other lines that have got the same sort of makeup where there's no knot and there's just a tapered leader at either end. And whilst, you know, they've cast further than they would have done just with £15 line on, say, they're still a bit wiry, and because the subline's so soft, it just flies off the spool. And I know Mark Hutchinson's been badgering me for some samples of it, so he can get miles out on the place that he's fishing. So, you know, it's a definite way of getting around those rules. One or two casting styles now, mate. What tips can you give to people for getting extra distance?
Extra distance, well, it's all about foot position.
Right.
You know, and using your body weight. I'm only a little bloke,
you
know, so I have to use everything I've got. So, you know, my casting style is to sort of lean back,
Yep.
and start the cast, and then pull forward. Hate
Yep.
it out there. You've got to push and pull.
Yep.
You know, push this one out and pull this one back as hard as you can.
Yeah, I've noticed as well that your hand speed is really quick as well, and there's like a shift in the top part of your body that whacks it out there. Because I mean, we have had to really be hammering it to get it out there in this wind, haven't they? And I mean, I've seen you come like the sort of you throw it back and come around the side, and also you're doing an overhead thump as well. So when do you choose between the two?
Depends how I feel on some days and how much space I've got.
Right.
In these swims, we've got plenty of space.
Yep.
The overhead thump is a very powerful cast. It locks the rod up really quickly. It's not one that I use all the time, but the sort of more fluid cast where I let the lead go out the front and come around the back.
Yep.
That's something I've done for years, and it's kind of hard to change. You get used to doing it, and if your foot position's right, wherever you look, I seem to cast, and that's where it goes. It's only in massive crosswinds when you've got variables like the line being bowed out and it's dragging the lead round, then you have to change the lead size and that sort of thing. So.
Yeah. One thing I've noticed recently, I went out with Mark Hutchinson for a day, and that movement of the body, starting off on your back foot, transferring your weight through onto your front foot, makes so much difference. And having that right arm up in the air, really gripping the rod with your left hand, and really pulling into that. I've even, like when I've been going to the gym, which is not as often as I should do, but I've even started doing that sort of exercise now. One of the guys who is in the South African carp fishing team, he was saying that all their boys in the team all train to cast,
really?
To build their shoulders up and stuff. And I think if you can combine that sort of fluid motion with good hand speed and move your body at the same time, that's what gets a long way.
And practice.
Absolutely. You watch people like Mark who's cast and cast and cast. Doesn't seem to put any effort into it, yet it goes miles, And I would say if anybody wanted to cast further, going out with a tutor who teaches you how to cast will get miles further than you'd ever get on your own, and he's worth its weight in gold, I would say.
He put 30 yards on your cast, didn't he?
I went from, with a marker float clipped up, I went from 140 to 170 with a marker float, and I was getting just about there with the fishing rods as well, and that was in a couple of hours. So, a day out with somebody like that, oh, that was a bleep on my rod. A day out with somebody like that is worth every penny.
Definitely.
How about that for a super pristine mirror carp? 39 pounds of muscle-packed male mirror carp. You can tell it's a male because it's milting at the moment. The fish are going to be spawning in a few weeks' time. And this one led me a merry dance, taking line at 130 yards. I thought it was an absolute monster, but still well pleased all the same. So that is our guide to lines for long range fishing. I'm sure out of one of those two, you're going to find something that suits you perfectly.